The Pentagon announces that it will provide training for 90 to 100 Ukrainian soldiers in the use of the Patriot air defense system, the Patriot battery air defense system that in an unprecedented way we are giving to the Ukrainians in order to suppress the Russian air supremacy over there in the war in Ukraine. So, what exactly is the Patriot battery system? How does it work? How do we intend to train the Ukrainians? And what kind of advantage will it give to the Ukrainians? And what would the Russians do in response, right? Because the enemy always gets a vote, right? The enemy always gets a vote. This, amongst other things, is what we're going to be covering today because, as you can see here on the screen, January 10th, 2023, Pentagon spokesperson Brigadier General Patrick Ryder announces that the U.S. will train 90 to 100 Ukrainian soldiers on the Patriot air defense system at Fort Sill Army base in Lawton, Oklahoma. Yes, the training will be taking place not in Europe, but over here. We'll be bringing the soldiers in here, United States to Oklahoma to train them. The U.S. first announced in late December 2022 that it would send the missile system, it's a missile system, okay, to Ukraine when that country's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, was in Washington. Click below. Okay, I have the links below to our previous videos on this very topic regarding the ongoing events with Ukraine. Let's continue reading here. When that country's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, was in Pentagon to meet with President Biden and members of Congress. Without disclosing classified security information, he said the training will begin in the coming weeks. Brigadier General Ryder's announcement came as he addressed the press during the daily Pentagon briefing. Other topics discussed include Afghanistan, harboring terrorist groups, tensions between China, Taiwan, U.S.-Japan relations. But we're going to be focusing mainly here on the Patriot battery system. And let's begin with his opening remarks, the opening remarks by the Pentagon spokesperson, Brigadier General Ryder. Let us go.
Separately, next week, Secretary Austin and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Milley, will travel to Germany to host the Ukraine Defense Contact Group at Ramstein Air Base. The contact group has been instrumental in identifying, synchronizing, and ensuring delivery of the military capabilities the Ukrainians need to defend their homeland against Russian aggression. The Secretary looks forward to meeting with defense leaders from the approximately 50 nations that comprise this important group dedicated to Ukraine's self-defense. Also, as was briefly highlighted last week during the announcement of the most recent presidential drawdown authorization, I can confirm that training for Ukrainian forces on the Patriot air defense system will begin as soon as next week at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. The training will prepare approximately 90 to 100 Ukrainian soldiers to operate, maintain, and sustain the defensive system over a training course expected to last several months. And once fielded, the Patriot will continue to contribute to Ukraine's air defense capabilities and provide another capability to the Ukrainian people to defend themselves against Russia's ongoing aerial assaults. We'll be sure to provide additional information as it becomes available. And finally, yesterday, the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps began its exercise titled Cooperation Afloat Readiness and Training, or CARAT, Marine Exercise Singapore 2022. This is a joint bilateral maritime exercise taking place in Singapore, and participants include the Republic of Singapore Navy, U.S. Navy, and U.S. Marine Corps. In its 28th year, the CARAT series is comprised of multinational exercises designed to enhance U.S. and partner navies and Marine Corps abilities to operate together in response to traditional and non-traditional maritime security challenges in the Indo-Pacific region.
Cooperation and training exercises of this kind and the kind of operating exercises that our help to Ukraine is providing is invaluable, right? When it comes to logistics and training, for example, the Ukrainian war is giving us an opportunity to test out our systems, to actually see in real time the Russian systems compared with the systems of the United States. And I will have to tell you that the United States is looking pretty good right now with regards to the superiority of our systems, okay, and the relative inferiority of the Russian systems. Now, the 90-pound gorilla is China, okay, China is at parity in certain ways with the United States. So it's no big deal that Russia is not looking so good when we're talking about a comparison to the United States. But we are getting a lot of training in terms of being able to do the logistics of weapons transfers and all those other kinds of things that we might have to do when the Taiwan issue becomes a hot war, ladies and gentlemen. But let's talk a little bit about this Patriot system. What exactly is it? Over here on the screen, I'm sharing what this looks like. Okay, basically, it's a battery system shooting out missiles, and this system here takes about 90 to 100 people to operate. Right now, the Russia, I should say, has some superiority over the Ukraine with regards to the air situation, air superiority. And this is going to help balance the tide with regards to that, right? So let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's talk a little bit more about this training, how this training is supposed to take place and whatnot. Let's go back to Mr. Ryder here.
So a Patriot battery, by definition, takes about 90 folks to operate and maintain that system. So the numbers are commensurate with what one would expect in terms of operating the Patriot battery that will be delivered to Ukraine. In terms of Ukrainian forces coming off the battlefield, since the very beginning, that's something that we have talked closely with the Ukrainians about to ensure that they can do both, right? Because as you point out, there is an ongoing fight. We certainly don't want to do anything that would jeopardize their ability to continue to fight. But ultimately, that's a decision for the Ukrainians to make in terms of how many troops they can afford to have come off the line in order to do the training. You've heard Secretary Austin, though, talk in the past about how important it is to look at this holistically, and that if I give you a piece of equipment, I'm simply giving you a piece of equipment. But if I give you the equipment and I give you the training, I now give you a capability. And so that's really essential here, is to ensuring that not only do the Ukrainians have the equipment they need to fight, but also the training that's going to enable them to operate it on the front line.
If I give you a piece of equipment and I give you the training, now I indeed give you a capability. So let's talk about that capability. Russia has air superiority, not such a surprise when compared with Ukraine, that is. But the United States can supply this system, the Patriot battery air defense system, and give the Ukrainians the training. So in what way exactly do we think that this is going to help the Ukrainians? And how will the Russians react? Because it's no strange, it's not a secret, right? It's being announced. We're saying we're going to be training them in the next few weeks. The training is going to last a few months. So what are the Russians doing? Vladimir Putin, by the way, met with Xi Jinping about a few weeks ago regarding further cooperation, right? And the way Vladimir Putin put it is like a boundless cooperation. It's like no holds barred. We're going to work together. So obviously, Vladimir Putin has been pushed into the hands of the Chinese. Okay, so I basically meant that Putin and Xi Jinping meeting together, talking about further cooperation. And this perhaps is part of how Russia would hope to respond. Are they going to be getting some weapons or some aid from China? Does China want to get in the middle of this? Probably not, right? Doesn't make sense for the Chinese to get in the middle of a fight between two other powers. Why not just let them fight it out while we wait here in the sideline and deal with our own internal concerns? But to the point about how this is going to help the Ukraine, okay, what exactly are the capabilities that this will give Ukraine, and how do we expect the Russians to react? Let's go.
Sure. So the Patriot will add to the air defense capabilities of Ukraine. As we've seen over the last number of months in particular, Russia has really intensified its aerial bombardment of Ukraine really across the country. And so the Patriot will contribute to the air defense capabilities that Ukraine already has. It's something that will enable them to take down ballistic, up to ballistic missiles, adversary aircraft, really up to them on how they employ it. But this is part of a broader effort by the United States and the international.
So note there that it can be used against ballistic missiles and also adversary aircraft. It's a air defense system. So it's not just for aircraft, but also ballistic missiles. And this is a battery system. Again, we can look at pictures of this, right? We've seen these before. They always show battery systems like this in the news. And this one is a particularly effective one. Trust me, the Russians will have a difficult time defending against this. They don't have a system like the Patriot battery system. So this is a great deal for the Ukrainians. They're getting the weapon and they're getting the training. This gives them the capability to fight back against both missiles and also the enemy aircraft. Let us continue.
But this is part of a broader effort by the United States and the international community to provide Ukraine with the air defense capabilities that it needs to defend its population and its armed forces.
Okay.
And just
now, let us talk about the possibility of future systems. What else are we going to do for the Ukrainians? Is this where it ends? I mean, we started out with, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. We're now, I believe, up to about $30 billion when it comes to aid to Ukraine. We know that perhaps we're not going to go all the way. This is not about defeating Russia. And there's going to be backdoor channels coaxing and urging Zelensky to sit down with Putin, right? Because we know that it has to be the end goal. At some point, this bromance between Zelensky and Biden has to come to an end, because we're not going to go into a full-blown war with Russia. And we're not necessarily benefiting in many different ways. But let me mention one way that we're benefiting. We're benefiting by the fact that the Europeans are now 100% dependent on American natural gas. Let me repeat that. The Europeans, as a result of this war and a result of the blow up of the pipeline, right? You remember the gas pipeline that was blown up towards the beginning of the war in 2022? Now, the Europeans have built receiving stations. Okay, they cut through all the green tape, or shall I say red tape of the green nature, right? All the regulations that have made it almost impossible to build such a system. They cut through all that and they built receiving stations. And now the American LNG, natural gas industry, is greatly benefiting from this. Now we're going to make them dependent on us in terms of natural gas. I also mentioned before that we're benefiting by way of logistics and training, because if something goes down in Taiwan, we're going to be able to see how to, or this opportunity right now is giving us the training that we need, testing the systems, the logistic systems and whatnot, in shipping the weapons over to the Taiwanese, training the Taiwanese against China, if it ever got to that, which we don't want it to get to, because China versus China is one thing completely different from Russia. But we're getting the opportunity right now in real time. And some people may say, hey, didn't we get that chance in Iraq and Afghanistan? Well, no, that was then. Okay, you always got to keep your capabilities up to snuff. And you always got to, because other people are developing as well. There's new capabilities in terms of technology, and people are coming up with new defenses as well. So you always got to be able to test in real time and in the real theater your capabilities in terms of logistics and training of your, shall we say, proxy states, right? So having said all that, what are we going to do next? What's going to be the next move? I do predict that at some point, for sure, the bromance between Biden and Zelensky has to come to an end. We're not going all the way with Russia, for sure. And there are already backdoor channels right now coaxing the Ukrainians to come to the table. All of this is under the premise that the Ukrainians have a right to defend themselves and to put the Ukrainians in a good position, in a position of strength when that negotiation table is brought out. This is not about defeating Russia, because we don't want to go there with a nuclear power, right? So what else do we plan on doing with regards to aid to the Ukraine? Let's hear from Brigadier General Patrick Ryder, the spokesperson of the Pentagon, talking about this training of 90 to 100 people on the American Patriot battery air defense system.
Are there any other systems we are sending to Ukraine that might be best suited to stateside training versus in Europe?
Yeah, as of right now, this will be the only one that I'm tracking, but of course, we'll continue to stay flexible and do what makes the most sense in support of Ukraine and ensuring that they have what they need and they get the training that they need. Thank you.
So that's a very simple answer there. Well, for now, this is what we're doing. We don't know where things are going and all those other kinds of things. And it doesn't make sense to continue to telegraph. And we know that we're not going to go all the way. We're not going to be giving Ukrainians nuclear weapons, for example. But now let's talk about the reaction side. Okay. This is not a linear process. This is a dynamic process. And the enemy always gets a vote. Vladimir Putin is not sitting on his hands while we announce that we're giving this weapon systems and training to Ukraine. What is going to be the Russian reaction? How are they going to plan on countering this? Okay, this what seems to be now becoming a war of attrition. The Russians are determined on capturing and holding Ukrainian territory. That is what they've been doing. The Russians have the advantage in terms of being able to wait the Ukrainians out. They seem to be very patient so far. Vladimir Putin does not strike me as the kind of person to back down. What will be his response to this particular Patriot battery system and the training being given to the Ukrainians?
So let me just say right up front that I'm not going to speculate about potential future operations, and I'm not going to try to go into intelligence about specifics in terms of what the Russians may or may not do. All that to say, I think we have to be careful to not look at the battlefield in a linear way, right? This is going to happen, then this is going to happen, this is going to happen. This is, since day one, has been a very dynamic, fluid situation. And there's a couple things we do know. Russia has been very clear that it intends to continue to try to take and hold Ukrainian territory, as evidenced by their invasion. So we have no reason to believe that they're going to let up on the throttle when it comes to operations. In the meantime, Ukraine has also been very clear that it intends to defend and take back its territory. And that's where we're focused, is making sure that they have what they need to defend their country and to take back their sovereign territory. So that obviously has to take into account.
Again, the context here is Russia is the aggressor. That's the context. Russia is the aggressor. Okay? And all we're helping the Ukrainians do is to be able to take back what is rightfully theirs. Okay? And this notion that Ukraine is part of Russia, part of the great Russian Empire, part of the great Slavic family, that know that Ukraine is an independent nation and Russia is the aggressor. All we're doing is helping them take back what the Russians are trying to capture and hold. So you have to listen to the language carefully here. It's not about, hey, we're going to beat back and defeat Russia and all those kinds of things. We're not saying that. And that is because at some point we expect the negotiation table to be drawn out and for Zelensky and Putin to come to terms. And these terms will definitely involve maybe giving up of some territory. Who knows, right? You know, there's some particular territories where, like the Donbass region and certain other places like that. Also, it will have to do with NATO. NATO, after all, is a big stated reason as to why Putin did what he did. Us threatening and saying, hey, we guarantee that Ukraine will be granted NATO status or joining the NATO League of Nations, if you will, is very threatening to Russia and also kind of insulting, right? How would Americans feel if Mexico decided to join the Chinese bloc and China says, hey, you know what? Hey, Mexico, whenever you feel like it, or let's say even if it's Russia, let's keep it apples to apples. If Russia tells Mexico, hey, come join our bloc, I believe it's called Cato or something. They created a similar system to NATO, in counter to NATO. Come join our bloc. How would the United States feel? How would they react? We can look back at the Cuban Missile Crisis, when indeed the Soviet Union, the back then Soviet Union, recruited Cuba and put missiles there. We did not like that. So in our back door, we would not like it, but we spoke rather belligerently, in my opinion, regarding our willingness to bring in Ukraine into the fold of NATO. So that's going to be on the negotiation table for sure. But let's let him finish his remarks with regards to the Russian reaction to this particular event.
Of variables, situations that could happen, and when it comes to Russia, we're going to continue to monitor. We're going to continue to work closely with the Ukrainians and the international community, again, to make sure they have what they need to counter that. So hopefully that gets to it.
I think.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we get the picture. We understand what's going on here. The idea is very clear. We have given air defense system that is good for countering both missiles and enemy aircraft to the Ukrainians. This is cutting edge technology. The Patriot battery system takes 90 to 100 people to operate, and we're going to be training them here in American soil. Well, I'm currently not in American soil. I'm over in Africa, but it's going to be in Oklahoma, Fort Sill in Oklahoma. So what exactly is this going to do for Ukrainian chances of defending their homeland and being able to retake their territory? Well, basically, it allows the Ukrainians to turn the tide with regards to Russian air supremacy in the war so far. What will the Russians do? That remains to be seen, but we understand that they have a vote. So what are your thoughts? Do you think that in 2023, we're going to see the negotiation table pulled out? What exactly will be the terms of a possible peace or peace talks or ceasefire between Zelensky and Putin? When will the bromance between Biden and Zelensky come to an end? How far will the Americans go? How far are we willing to go? We're 29 billion or 30 billion in so far, and we're giving this new Patriot system and we're providing training. How far are we willing to take this? Okay. And if the situation was reversed, if Russia was asking Mexico or Canada to join their bloc and saying, hey, you know what? We're going to arm you. We're going to do all that kind of, come join us. How would the United States feel about it? These, ladies and gentlemen, are the questions. I'm going to leave links below to our previous conversations where we covered the speech given by Zelensky to the Congress, the joint session of the Congress. Zelensky gave a speech and other items that were covered with regards to the Ukrainian war. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, this is the stop. This is the place to be for all your economic and geopolitical updates. My name is Ike Ogiamin. Until next time, peace. We are gone.